Hey Apex Agents, Mobius Y here with another video for Mass Effect Andromeda's multiplayer. This is part 2 of today's character build guide on the Batarian Scrapper. So we've got a gold match on Firebase Nimbus against Remnant for part 2 of this build guide. Not the best map for this character in my opinion, and easily the worst faction for this particular character as well. Simply because the Remnant are just so irritating, in my opinion. They've got the Breachers and the Observers, which are flyers, and they can really mess up the spawn nuke potential of this character. It's a lot easier against Outlaws and Ket because all of their units are on the ground, so it's a lot easier to go in and nuke an entire spawn when all of the enemies are standing on the ground. But when you've got a couple things that are flying up in the air, due to verticality of several of these maps, it really kind of cripples the spawn nuke potential, the damage potential of this character, in my opinion. Nevertheless, you will definitely see me utilizing this guy's burst damage potential with his powers. I almost exclusively use his powers in this game. I believe I was trying to finish up a daily challenge for combat power damage, essentially earning points using combat powers. So I believe I was finishing one of those off, so you don't really see me using the weapon a heck of a lot, not as much as I normally do with this character. And as I said in the build section, I don't really use the melee a heck of a lot, but I do recommend you definitely put those two aspects of this build into play whenever possible, because you don't want to be spamming your power cells all the time. Because it'll just resort you from, instead of going from enemy group to kill them, you'll be going from ammo box to ammo box, just trying to maintain your capabilities to kill entire groups of enemies. Nevertheless, I digress. You play how you want is essentially how it goes. Yeah, as you recall, if you saw part 1, and if you didn't, there's a link to it in the description below for the exact build and equipment that I'm using. From part 1 there, even though the passive for increasing defensive capabilities is at rank 4 and giving the highest maximum possible shields and health on this character, he's still not very tough. He's still pretty easy to get taken down. So you do need to be aware of your surroundings as much as possible. You'll see me kind of lose track of that sometimes, and it will cost me by taking quite a bit of unnecessary damage or possibly getting downed, forcing myself to use either a first aid or a revive pack. And it's you know, it's like I said, it's just being aware of your surroundings. Really good map knowledge helps out too, because when the wave first starts, you can identify where a whole group of bad guys have spawned. You can go to go to that whole spawn, take out that entire spawn, and then look around on the compass again to see where that group of enemies has respawned, so that you can continue the spawn nuking process over again. And it really helps cut down on the wave budget quite a bit when you do that several times, and it just makes the game go faster in general. And that's where this character really excels. He's not so great at taking down single targets because it is quite costly of resources, especially if you are neglecting to use your melee or your weapon in particular. So you could wind up spending, 2 or 3 or 4 power cells from one or both of your powers just to take down a single enemy if it's by itself. So it's really inefficient to be using the powers like that. You always want to try to be using it on groups of bad guys, even if it's just 2 sub-bosses. For example, in this game, two Remnant Nullifiers, for example. You can hit them with a couple flat cannons until they die. That's perfectly fine. But if it was, for example, a single Breacher, and you wind up using both a concussive shot and a flat cannon just to kill a single Breacher, kind of inefficient, but there's a good bet that you may see me do that here and there. Taking down a Remnant Assembler with several power cells, not entirely terrible, but sometimes if the situation calls for it and you just need to move on to get to the next group of enemies as quickly as possible, go for it. Of course, you could always go with the age-old simply snap freeze them really quick and then punch them in the face with your Batarian Gauntlet to set off a cryo combo and basically 2-hit kill them. So there is that. The important thing to remember is just to not neglect the use of your weapon, and don't forget that your melee sets off combos. So it adds another element into being able to do area damage and adding to that burst damage that this particular character has. So you do see in several instances where we take on some remnant destroyers, which is essentially the boss unit in this game. I basically just shoot it with the flat cannon repeatedly. This is where the N37 Falcon, I feel, comes in really nicely and gels really nicely with this particular build, because in between spamming your flat cannon, there's about a second and a half delay between being able to shoot them, shoot out your flat cannon, I should say. And in that delay, you can fire off a shot with the Falcon. You could essentially do it with whatever other weapon you are using, excuse me, but it's just a little harder to do with something like the Venom, which gets the most use out of its damage potential when you charge up the shot, and that can just cut into the time spent continuously dealing damage with the combination of your weapon and your flat cannon spamming. So, it's entirely up to you. Use whichever weapon goes best for your own personal kind of methodology and playstyle, I would say. But I still recommend using, as I said, something that shoots out like a solid projectile and causes some kind of an explosion in order to be able to add another element of crowd control to this kit, because a lot of those weapons can inflict some kind of a stagger on mooks and sub-bosses. Not necessarily bosses, but definitely the smaller grade enemies. And they all do decent damage as well, usually being able to 2 or 3 shot really low quality moves and whatnot. Nevertheless, I think I will stop there. Enjoy the rest of the gameplay. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of how to play the build for the Batarian Scrapper that I went over in part 1. As I said earlier, if you would like to see the exact build and setup that I'm using with this character, check the link in the description below for part 1 of today's character build guide. Thanks very much for watching. This has been Mobius Y for Mass Effect Andromeda's multiplayer. For more Andromeda multiplayer content, feel free to subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon to turn on notifications. I'll see you guys on the battlefield. Good luck, Apex.
Flatline. 3 left. Go get him. Enemies clear. Stay alert. Detected mission-critical data. Find the location and upload the intel. Shields around! Data transfer complete. Shuttle incoming. Get to the extraction zone.